Hello and welcome back to Maverick Mind. Such a joy to be back here with you all. I have been a busy little bee recording a lot of new episodes for the podcast recently, and I've been having so many conversations that really made me feel like this is why I still have this show after a year and a half, meeting so many just incredible people with the coolest stories and the deepest, most lived insights into what it really takes to live a creative life and to create all day, every day, and what that really looks like. And yeah, this week's guest is definitely one of those people. This is Teri M. Brown. She is an author of many, many books across different genres, and somebody whose creative life was kind of like a dam in a river for a long time, blocked for years until the floodgates finally opened, and boy, did they open. Teri's writing journey really began after the end of a 14-year emotionally abusive relationship, which we dive into during the episode, just a trigger warning in case that is a trigger for anybody. But it's definitely a story of rising above something that's really difficult to rise above. It's being in a situation like that left her really not trusting her voice. And then when she found that trust, she channeled it into every word that she could share with the world. It wasn't until actually she left that marriage and met her now husband that they decided to undergo a challenge that many would not even think to do. And they rode across the United States. That's 3,102 miles. On a tandem bicycle. And it's through doing the seemingly impossible, that she really tapped into the courage to start sharing her work in such a big way with the world. In this conversation, we talk about what it takes to reclaim your creative identity after silence and fear, letting go of perfection, leaning into discomfort, and writing even when you haven't earned the right to necessarily call yourself an author yet. I think that translates into so many different channels of creativity. We dig into the courage it takes to finally share your work publicly, and how creative confidence is something you kind of just grow into, not something that just appears from nowhere or somewhere, something that we think people will just have when they definitely don't. This episode is about trust. It's about identity and discovering that your story matters long before you necessarily think that it does. This is such a fab episode, and Teri is such a unsurprisingly amazing storyteller. So I won't babble on for too long. So Teri M. Brown, what an absolute pleasure to welcome you to Maverick Mind. Hey Teri, a massive warm welcome to Maverick Mind. What a pleasure to have you here.
Oh, it's wonderful to be here. I'm super excited.
Me too. There's actually loads of things within your story that I really want to dive into. I think that you've got so much to say, of course, which makes sense given you've written so many books. But the one that I kind of am most intrigued to kind of kick this conversation off with, because I think it must be such a interesting story, is the story to you writing your book 10 Little Rules for a Double Butted Adventure. First, that's the best name for a book I've ever heard. But I would love to know the inspiration for that journey that you took, and then the writing the book about it.
Okay, so just so that people kind of get caught up, it is a tandem bicycle ride. So that's a two-seater bicycle from the coast of Oregon to Washington, D.C. That's 3,102 miles. We have to kind of go back a little to know, like, how did this all come up? I had spent 14 years in an emotionally abusive relationship, and I had wanted to be an author, but I was terrified to even consider trying because I wasn't living in a very safe space. And I finally got out of that relationship, and words started pouring out of me, but I was very damaged. I didn't believe in myself. I didn't believe I had any worth or value. And I started having this fantasy about doing something big and bold, like outrageously crazy to prove to people that I still had value. Well, I didn't need to prove it to people. I needed to prove it to me, but I didn't recognize that. I thought that the world was judging me. So now I meet Bruce, who becomes my husband. I was never getting married again, so that could be we could talk about that for 3 hours. But anyway, needless to say, he kind of stuck around. And while we were dating, he said, I've always wanted to ride across the United States on a bicycle. And I thought, that would be an adventure, especially for me. I had not been on a bicycle in 40 years. So I said, are you going to talk about this until the day you die, or are you going to do it? He said, no, I really want to do it. I said, count me in. Well, he is a fanatic when it comes to cycling and super good, been doing it for years. There was no amount of training that was going to catch me up to him. I just wouldn't be able to do it. So if we'd gone across the United States, he would have been ahead of me all day long. It wouldn't have been fun for either one of us. So we decided to do it on a tandem, because on a tandem, he can't go faster than me and I can't go slower than him. We have to work together. And so, yeah, in I guess like June of 2020. We were supposed to leave in May, but that was COVID and things were shut down and we didn't think
Yeah.
we were going to be able to go. And we ended up leaving in June. We sent everything off to Oregon and got on a bicycle and rode 3,102 miles across the United States. So
Wow.
yeah.
So were you married already at this point, or was this kind
So
of
at that point we had gotten married. I had no
okay?
intention of getting married and assumed that he and I would do this adventure just as friends. And then, afterward I could just walk away from it. And now I got married because I fell in love with him. And, that, like I
Yeah.
said, long, long story, because I had been in this horrible relationship and really had zero desire to do that again.
Yeah.
And, he tells everyone that he chased me until I caught him.
Love that. Good. The reason I ask is just because that is a recipe for either you're going to be married at the end of that, there's no breaking you apart, or disaster.
Well, so one of the things that people often call a tandem bicycle is a divorce machine, because you have to work together.
Hmm.
You have to find the rhythm of being together, because you're together all day, every day. I mean, we did this ride. We started the end of June. We didn't finish until the 1st of October. We were together every single day, and usually no more than an arm length apart. I mean, we were constantly together. And so not only that, but on a tandem, you have to start the bicycle together, stop the bicycle together. When one of you needs to rest, you both have to. Everything is done in a cooperative manner. And so if you can't figure that out, yeah, the ride would have been miserable. But luckily, we had a really great marriage in it, and it was beautiful. So
Yeah. Amazing. So when you set off, did you already have the idea of writing the book, or was it just something that slowly came over time while you were pedaling away?
I had an idea that I would write something. I wasn't sure what it was. Originally, I thought it might be more like a how-to manual, like, how to prepare for a bicycle ride, or that kind of thing. Um, but I kept a blog the whole way across. And when we got home from this trip, it's really hard. We rode every single day. And but we just rode that day. And then at the end of it, we'd ridden across the United States. And it was kind of hard to put that in my mind. It was like I knew I had done it, but it didn't feel like I rode across the United States. It felt like I rode days. And so I started looking over my blog again, trying to, like, I don't know, feel the whole trip as a trip, as opposed to just a day of riding, a day of riding, a day of riding. And as I was reading my blog, I recognized that there were a lot of lessons I learned about life. So I started jotting those down. And before long, it was like, this is the book. This is the lessons, the life lessons that I learned. So that's the 10 little rules for a double-butted adventure, or 10 life lessons that I learned while taking this amazing journey.
I love that. It's kind of similar to a book. Well, not similar, but it's a similar vibe to a book
Yeah,
that was really huge in England a couple of years ago. I don't know if it's but went worldwide, but it's called The Salt Path.
I've not heard of it.
Salt Path. I think maybe it might just be it was like really huge in England because it's written about a couple, married couple, that walk the coast of England, well, around a part of
Oh,
Devon,
okay.
Cornwall,
Yeah.
the south of England. Um, and yeah, it wasn't that kind of laid out in the same way of the learnings of the main
Right.
kind of narrator, which was the woman, the writer, whose name I've forgotten. Um, but it was a similar thing of sort of like day by day what came through
Right.
that
Right. And so for
journey.
me, it was just really amazing. I finished the ride on the day that I finished the ride. We're coming up in Washington, D.C. We're going to finish at the Marine Corps Memorial. My husband was a 25-year veteran. We were raising money for Toys for Tots. It was just the perfect place to stop. And we're coming up, and my husband says, "Do you see that? Do you see the flag?" And I said, "Yeah." He said, "That's it. That's where we're stopping." Well, I'm laughing and crying at the same time. Like, I cannot believe that I've done it. It really hit me. I just rode across the United States on a bicycle. I could do anything.
Yeah.
It's not a matter of can I do it, but what do I want to do? And at that point, it was, I want to be an author. And
Mm.
14 months later, I had my first novel out. So, I mean, it was very much the catalyst for taking me from someone who essentially wrote quietly in a closet without anyone knowing I was doing it to here are my words and I want the world to see them.
Yeah, and
And
well, it seems like it kind of started a wildfire because you've written so many different books from there,
I
from
have
the list that
now
you gave us, kind of also across loads of different genres
genres. Yeah.
or yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. I think since being in that abusive relationship, I don't like being in a box. I don't like people telling me what I am and what I have to do and how I have to do it. I just find that very stifling. And so, yeah, I've been told, oh, you're going to ruin your career because you do so many genres. And it's like, okay, all right, if that's what it's going to be, then that's what it's going to be, because I don't want to write just one thing.
Mm.
I don't want to write the same book 110 times with a different title. I have ideas and things, and whatever they are, if it is what feels good to me and this is what I want to write, then that's what I want to do. And I don't want to say, oh, I can't write that because it doesn't fit this little prescribed thing box that someone has shoved me in and said, this is who you are.
Yeah,
So,
definitely. I think a lot of us get that information, especially when you're
yeah,
starting to pursue whatever your creative channel is as like a real career, that you should be in a quote unquote like niche, and that's how
right.
you win, or that's how you get noticed, or how you become successful. Whereas I think that actually success is whatever you define it as. If it's, and I think for most
Yes.
creatives, it equals freedom. And to feel free, does that mean putting yourself in a box? What does that mean?
And maybe for some people that does feel good.
It does, yeah.
I have some friends who they have one genre, they stick to it, they love it. They write a series of like 9 books with the same characters for all 9 books, and they're very happy there. And I would be bored to tears. And
Yeah.
it isn't right or wrong. It's what do you need? And for
Mm.
me, I need to be able to say this character is speaking to me, and this character is a contemporary character. And so I'm going to write her. And the next character that speaks to me is a character from, 1492. Okay. That, like, wherever my character is what I want to write. And I don't like that idea of being like handled into this lane. You can only write this. No, I can write anything I want,
Yeah, I think
you
it's
know.
definitely true. It's really, well, the more I work with people or the more I speak to people on this show, the more it becomes very, very clear that there is nothing that is right or wrong. It's just whatever feels
Yeah.
right for you and your body. And I can really see from your journey how that freedom of just being able to express in any way that feels like it's coming up in that moment after what you went through is
Yeah.
like really your version of success, really, because it's like breaking free from that control that you are.
Right, right. So for 14 years, I had to be so careful, right? What I said, anything I did could cause, like complete chaos in my world. And so I had to be very careful and had to be very thoughtful about every syllable that came out of my mouth and all of those things. And now it's not that I mean, we should all be careful. We shouldn't just let anything fly out of our mouths. I don't
Yeah.
mean that. But I mean, now if I have a creative thought and I want to explore it, I don't have anyone telling me you can't, you shouldn't, you mustn't. And those people who try to do that, I just ignore them.
Mm.
You don't get to tell me, I get to decide. And therefore, if I ruin my own career, well, then I did that.
Yeah, for sure.
Right.
During those
Yeah.
14 years, did you have that kind of little spark inside of you that was saying, like, I want to write, or I want to
Oh, yeah.
make a
Oh, yeah.
book, or I
But
want to do this or that, but you just
I
didn't?
did. I wanted to write, but when you're artistic of any kind, this creativity, and you're going to put it out in front of the world, it's very vulnerable, because this is something very internal, something very dear to you that you have now put out to the world in whatever format. And so for me, it would be like in a character. And can you imagine? I'm living in a relationship in which I'm told pretty much daily that I'm not worthwhile. And
Mm.
then I put my book out there, and what if you hear that too?
Yes.
Right? I didn't have a safe spot that, like, once I married Bruce and I put my book out to the world, if someone said something that hurt my feelings, I could go crawl into his arms.
Mm.
Right? And he was my safe space. I knew I was safe, but I didn't have that before. So there was no way I was already too vulnerable. I wasn't going to open myself up so that the whole world could now point their finger and say, you're not good enough. I could not allow myself to do that.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that I've met quite a few people that have been through similar things. And what I'd love to know from your journey or your perspective, what kind of gave you the courage to realize that that wasn't the space for you, and that realize that maybe you were worth more and that you could do more and you could be more?
I
Or
think,
was it just
yeah, I
everything
think
snapped?
for me, yeah, I think for me, I I knew it, but I was afraid. Sometimes the devil is easier to deal with than the one you don't. And there was just this real fear. And I had been told that I would not be able to make it alone. And so you begin to believe that, even though there was a piece of me that doubted that to be true. I don't know. But he did something. I had one line in the sand. He used to take all of our money. And like one day I would go to something from the bank and there'd be no money there. And he would have had moved it all to another bank where I didn't have access. And he had done that a couple of times. And when he did it the third time, I told him, if you ever do that again, I'm leaving. It was the only
Mm.
line I had drawn. But don't do that again. Like, if you do that again, I'm gone. And 2 years later, he did it again and I left. And so for me, I think it was this, he crossed the one line. And I should have made so many other lines. Like I look back now and it's like I should have had so many other lines and left so much earlier. But I tell people, because they'll say, well, how can you help someone who needs to leave a relationship? And it's like, they can't leave until they can leave,
Yeah.
right? Like, it has to come from within them. They have to hit a point, whatever that point is. And that was my point. It was, don't cross this one simple line. It's so easy. All you have to do is leave the money in the bank. Like, it's not hard, right?
Yeah.
And he went and moved it again, and I was gone within. I found out at 7 p.m. and by 4 p.m. the next afternoon, everything I owned was in storage, and I was living 3 hours away with my son. I just left. I said, "That's it.
Yeah.
I'm done." So
Wow. Good on you for like sticking to your word. Because I
yeah.
think a lot of people would still be afraid to do that.
Well,
And
yeah, and it's terrifying. It's absolutely terrifying because you don't know what's on the other side of this. But today, as I look back, I am so thankful he took that money again, because who knows, I might still be there, still trying, still hoping that someday it will get better, because I didn't want to be divorced,
yeah.
right? I wanted this to work, and it wasn't working, and I kept trying and trying and trying. Well, you can't make something work if the other person doesn't also work to
Yes.
make it work, right? It takes both of you. And I was doing all of the work in the relationship, and I'm so thankful he took the money. Like, I am so glad that whatever that was in his head that made him say, well, I'm going to take the money. And I think what he thought is he would take the money and I would stay. And
Yeah.
then he would know that he could do anything,
Mm.
you know, because I only had the one line. And he crossed it and I left, and that was it. It was, I'm so glad. I'm so grateful. I've never been so grateful someone took something from me in my life.
Definitely, I think we're all grateful. But after that happened, you did eventually leave.
Yeah.
Do you remember like your process of maybe rediscovering your voice or rediscovering your creativity after that?
Yeah.
Before we continue, I want to pause and share something that I built for heart led creatives like you. Ember is the supportive space to ground, to regulate, to reset, and to grow. Inside, you'll learn how to work with your creative energy instead of against it, so you can move through blocks and deeply trust your voice. You can try Ember for free for 7 days. Just head to the link in the show notes to join us, and I cannot wait to see you inside. Now, let's get back to the episode.
So I started writing very quickly. It's like all of the words that had been dammed up inside of me just came spilling out. And I wrote and I wrote and I wrote. But I really wasn't willing to show it to anyone because I didn't believe in myself at all. You don't walk away from a 14-year bad marriage and then you're just healed because you walked away. I mean, there's a lot of gunk that's in there. And so I had a lot of insecurity and I didn't believe in myself. Um, the first manuscript I wrote, I look back at it now and it's like, oh, it's horrible. I mean, it's really bad, but it was a first one. And I think the first of anything that you do creatively, it doesn't necessarily look good. I can't imagine Picasso's first painting was a masterpiece, right? More than
No.
likely, he was still figuring out how to hold the brush correctly and get the paints to glob on the right way, right? There's all of that stuff. But my character in that one is really funny because she's perfect. She has all these bad things happen to her and she handles them perfectly every time. And the reason the story is no good is because she's not like you and me. She doesn't have any, she doesn't do anything wrong. And I think it's really telling because that's a space that I had been in for so long where I was
Mm.
trying to be perfect and I needed to be perfect. And now that I was out of this bad relationship, I still felt this need to handle everything perfectly, to like prove something. I don't know. And I go back and I look at that character and I think that's kind of me. It isn't. I mean, this was an 18-year-old. It wasn't me at all, but I think it was me. I was trying to give her this ability to not ever be hurt the way I was hurt, to not
Yeah.
ever have to go through those kinds of things. And it's the storyline. I mean, there could be something, but the amount of work that it would take to go back and make this perfect character something other than perfect would be pretty intense.
Yeah, that's so interesting. But I guess it's also
Yeah,
when you've been controlled and like you had to be perfect in the eyes of
right.
your
Of whoever it
ex-husband for
was.
that
Right,
long.
right,
For so it's kind of also in somehow how you were trained to be. But I think also in another way, it's how we all think we're supposed to be. We all
right,
think we're supposed to show up through life perfectly and do everything and it, you know, gets, world recognition right off the bat and it's going to be perfect and everything's going to be fine. Because I think then it's our picture of safety. Like if nothing goes
right,
wrong, then I am safe. But then everybody
right.
knows if you look back on your creative journey for a long time, that perfection is not what inspires anything.
No, and not only that, but you look at any journey and it's not a straight line. It's a big
Mm.
tangled knot. You're forward, you're backward, you're right, you're left, you're up and you're down, you're around in circles, you're going backward, you're doing all of these crazy things. That's life. And so as I progressed with my manuscripts, my characters began becoming more real, more like people that you and I can identify with. And
Mm.
that's what I've become really good at is I love character driven fiction. I love creating a character that when you're reading it, you can become the character. And why can you become the character? Because you can identify with the character, because you understand, oh, she's just made a mistake. That was an error of judgment. And you can understand it because you too have made an error similar to that in your life, and you recognize her thought patterns to get there, but you're also in your mind going, no, 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 don't do it, because. And that's the kind of characters I like to write, are the ones that just really speak to that inside you, not the social media you that you put out there that's, here's me looking all perfect, but the real me, the one that forgot, to take her wallet to the grocery store today, and was standing at the checkout and had half of the things run through when she realized she had no money. That's the character that I like to write.
Yeah, I think that's really the power of fiction, but also this applies to a lot of other channels of creativity, that even if you don't see yourself fully in that, you generate a lot more compassion and understanding for other people's
Yes.
stories, other people's journeys, and it creates
Yes.
a lot more connection. And I think sometimes that just understanding that power can really help people cultivate the bravery to share their work when they are a little bit scared to.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah. Was there anything else that kind of slowly guided you to feel um, like you wanted to share your work? I mean, you've already said finishing the tandem
Yeah,
ride. Was there anything else?
finishing the tandem ride was really like the biggest thing. My husband also had started reading my things, and he kept telling me it was good. And it's not that I didn't believe him, but I didn't believe that he would be 100% honest with me. Like,
Yeah.
of course he's going to tell me it's good. He loves me. You know, how accurate is he in his assessment? Like, and so there was that. I mean, he kept encouraging me. He was definitely like one of my greatest cheerleaders. But I think it was the ride that, when I realized I really am capable. I am a capable human being. And now it's a matter of determining, what do I want to channel all of this energy into? I can do what I set my mind to do. So what is that? And yeah, I just decided I want to be an author. And so I began channeling all of my energy into that. When my first book came out, though, I had channeled all my energy into the writing. I knew nothing about the marketing aspect. So
Oh
on
yeah.
day one, my book comes out, right? And I kind of sitting there with my Amazon link open, waiting to watch it sell, and it isn't. And I'm like, oh, oh, oh. And I mean, I had no marketing in place. Most of my neighbors didn't even know I was writing. I mean, I was still being very quiet about it. And so I had to learn I tell people now that I can stand up on a table with my book and scream, hello, here's my book. Um, and so I had to get from this very quiet, meek, afraid to say out loud that I wrote a good book, because doesn't that sound conceited? To being able to say, no, I did. I wrote a good book. You should read it. And the that journey was another big one, going from the quiet, unassuming, I hope you read my book and I hope you enjoy it, and like looking down at your shoes, to being able to say, no, I've written a great book,
Yeah, I
and
see
you're
that
and you're
really
going to
often.
enjoy it. Yeah.
Yeah, I see that often in loads of different creative, but I would say
Yeah.
largely with authors, because I think the author, when you're writing a book, it's such a mammoth task to write a whole big fat book.
Yeah.
Then when you're at the end, you're like, oh, now I have to keep talking about it.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and a lot of times too, when you look at, personality traits, a lot of authors are they're just quiet people. What they've chosen to do requires you to be alone. It's not like you write in groups. You
Mm,
don't get input until after you've written. It's a very solitary kind of thing. And then marketing is not.
yes.
Marketing requires that you put yourself out there. And luckily for me, I don't feel like I'm an introvert or an extrovert. I'm a little of both. And it's like whatever I need to be for whatever I'm doing, I fit very happily into. So I can be very outgoing when I need to be for my marketing. And then I can also be very, quiet and internal when I'm doing my writing. A lot of people don't have that, and they find the marketing really tough. And it's not that I find it easy. I've had it's hard to figure out what works, like how to get your name out there and how to start from nothing and become anything at all. And it's a tough challenge, but at least I don't find it distressing. I also have a podcast where I talk with authors only. And I've had authors come on and I can see how distressed they are. Like this is distressing for them to have this interview. And it's like, we're just having a conversation and you can do that. This is one-on-one. This is going to be easy. And by the end, they've loosened up, but you can see the fear and the terror of I've got to be doing what? You want me to talk about my book? It's like, yeah, yeah. I want you to not only talk about it, but tell me how great it is.
Yeah.
Right. And that's just hard. I did a marketing class for new authors. And I told them, I said, if you cannot say, I've written a great book and you should read it, none of your marketing is going to work. Like you've got to be able to say that. And I had someone say, isn't that conceited?
Mm.
And I said, well, I don't know. Let's put it in another aspect. If you have a clogged toilet and your plumber that you've called comes in and says, I'm an excellent plumber and I can fix that clog, do you think he's conceited or are you really glad that he's got the talent to fix your toilet?
Mm.
And they're like, well, no. And I said, it's the same thing. It's just that when we're creative, now it's like, well, this is part of my personality. This is part of my internal. And now it feels a little more conceited. But the truth is if you wrote a good book, it's okay to say so. If you've painted a good painting, it's okay to say so. If you've written a good song, if you have a good voice, it's okay to say so,
Yeah,
you
definitely. And
know?
I think often when you do feel like naked
Yeah,
in what you've created, whether it's, something that's like really showing a literal time in your life, or whether it's something a little bit more abstract, like through a character or just through a
right.
vibe that you have, and you're really putting yourself behind your taste. I think when you feel like that, that's kind of when we're getting it right. It means
Yeah.
that you're not like creating to people please, you're actually telling the truth. And
And
it
it's
is
scary.
definitely, it's scary, definitely scary to just say, like, this is who I am, this is what I stand for,
This is
this is what
me.
I've
Right.
made, and this is good. But I think once you've got that little bit inside of you of, can I do this? Can I say that? I don't know if I can. I think that's also a sign that you're on the right path yourself.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I agree. I'd never really thought about it that way, but I think you're right that you're not afraid to show something that doesn't have meaning to you,
Yes,
right?
exactly.
It's very easy. For instance, I have written some nonfiction for hire by companies who've said, "Hey, can you write a book about such and so?" And I've done it for the money because, we have to eat. And
Mm.
those books mean nothing to me.
Mm.
Nothing to me because they're not from me. They are facts and figures that I have figured out how to put into a nice little format so that people can read it and get specific information about, you know, how to be a landlord or whatever it is, right? But my novels, that's a harder thing because that's from me. That's inside me. This is a story I needed to tell. And these are
Yeah.
characters I created and I'm putting them out into the world. And that's a very different thing. That's so different. 100% different.
Yeah. What like advice would you give someone if they are on that point of knowing that they need to share something, or that they should quote unquote share something, or they have a deep desire to do it, but for something in them is stopping them from doing that? What would you say?
I'm a big believer in take a deep breath, close your eyes and just do it.
Mm.
Because what I always look at what is the very, very worst thing that can happen. So for instance, I there was a local bookstore and I had been afraid to approach them. I don't know why, but just the idea of walking in and saying, "Here's my books and I want you to carry them." It just really scared me. And so I stopped and I said, "Well, what do I have right now?" I do not have my books in that bookstore. The very worst thing that can happen is I go in and when I walk out, I still do not have my books in that bookstore,
Mm.
right? Nothing has really changed.
Mm.
I don't have them now. and I won't have them then. What's the best thing that can happen? They carry my books in their bookstore. Right. So I kind of play that game in my head. What's the worst thing that can happen? And as long as that worst thing is something that is tolerable to me, I I usually just take a deep breath, close my eyes, and just do it. I've sent emails before where I've written it all out. I thought, I just don't know. I just send.
I've definitely done
Just
that. Yeah.
and so I think it's just a matter of, what do you have to do to get brave enough to push the button, to make the call, to do whatever it is, and then suck it up and do it. Just do hard things. It's not easy. I don't think it ever gets easy.
No.
I still have to take deep breaths before I walk into bookstores, but I also know that it's worth it. And so you just do it. Once I'm doing it, I'm fine. That's the thing that always blows my mind is I get myself all tied in knots and then I get to start to do it. And it's like, oh, this isn't so bad. What was I worried about? Right.
Yeah.
But we do that in our heads. And so, yeah, for me, it's just take a deep breath, close my eyes, and barrel right into it. Because the worst thing that will happen is you fail. And that's not the worst thing that could ever happen.
No, definitely not. I think a lot of us fear that, but it's actually
Yes.
really not a big deal. In fact, I think you need to allow yourself to fail.
Yeah. Well, if you don't fail, if everything comes easily, you really learn nothing. You don't grow, you don't become, you don't figure out what people are needing or wanting. You don't do any of those things. And, I don't say that we should write. You have to write to your audience, but you also have to write what you want. And so you have to find that balance. And so sometimes when people say no, you might look at it and go, okay, I've got the balance too much leaning toward me. And what is it that my audience is wanting? Can I give that to them and still be true to myself? Well, you don't find any of that out if you just are walking around and everything is just easy, right? And
Yeah.
you only grow during the hard times.
Mm.
The easy times, that's when you coast and it's lovely, but you don't learn anything during those times. You're just coasting along. It's when bad things happen, difficult things happen, that you rise to the challenge and you dig deep and you figure out who you are and you come up with alternate plans and all of those things. And that's where the growth happens.
Yeah, definitely. It's in the embracing of the discomfort.
Yeah. Yeah.
Cut, leading on a little bit from marketing, something else I find that people do struggle with, and it's maybe not necessarily that they are afraid to put themselves out there. Maybe they've got a little bit, they realize that they have to do it. So they are closing their eyes and just clicking post or whatever else. But a lot of them get
Right.
really overwhelmed with the amount of options for how to market
Yeah.
yourself. Is that something that you encountered? And if so, what
Yeah.
did you do with that?
Well, the first thing I suggest is do not buy one of those books, 1,001 Ways to Market Your Book or your art or your whatever, because no one can do 1,001 things. So don't even. The next thing is there are 1,001 ways to market your book or your art or whatever. So kind of think about you and your personality and what feels good for you and what feels comfortable for you. I have some friends who get on TikTok and they do all kinds of videos and things. That's not me. Like I put some stuff out on TikTok. It doesn't do well because it really isn't what TikTok's looking for. And I'm not willing to do what TikTok's looking for. I don't want to hang upside down. I don't want to do weird things. It isn't me. So instead of me feeling badly that I'm not on TikTok, I don't focus my attention there because it isn't good for me. Podcasts are great for me. I love having conversations. This is not hard for me. This feels good and natural. So look for marketing that fits who you are as a person and fits what you have to offer. You know, I also look at, like, we'll go back to TikTok where I'm not comfortable. Most of the people that read my books are 40 and up. And I would say it's even skewed a little higher, maybe 55 and up. Those people aren't on TikTok, right? So I'd be doing a lot of work that felt horribly uncomfortable in order to reach people who aren't my readers, right?
Mm.
So you have to really think about where is your audience? Where are they showing up? And of those places that they show up, where do you feel comfortable showing up to? And then focus your attention there. And if you're only focusing your attention then on these couple of things, and I feel like you should market every day. And so I spend 15 minutes a day marketing. I do something every day for 15 minutes. And once you get it going, that 15 minutes is enough to keep it sustained. So maybe in the beginning, you have to do a little more in order to get things set up and et cetera. But once you have the machine, now you just feed it every day a little bit, and then it's not overwhelming. Marketing can get horrible. You could spend all day, every day marketing if you wanted to. But
Yeah.
but for me, if I did that, what am I going to market? When did I write? When
Yes,
did I allow
exactly.
myself the creativity, right? When did I allow myself to take a shower? Like, you have to, there has to be a balance. And so for me, I've learned that the 15 minutes a day, if I give myself 15 minutes to do the marketing, I know I've done something today that's worthwhile, that has moved it forward. And I focus on the things that feel good to me in an area where I believe my audience shows up.
Yeah, that also touches on a really key point, and that is to know who you're speaking to
Right.
and know that you don't need to speak to everybody. Because I think a lot of
No.
people, we think, oh, well, it could be like this whole range of people. And if I don't speak to this whole range of people, then I'm going to alienate people. When actually, if you speak to everybody, you're speaking to no one. Whereas if you really
Right.
know who you're speaking to, it does cut down the overwhelm a lot because you
It
don't
does.
have as many choices as you say. Like TikTok might not be. I was speaking to an author not long ago, and her main channel is TikTok, but the kind of books she writes are,
Probably fantasy.
yeah, a bit more TikTok-y. So it
Yeah.
is really understanding where they
Right.
hang out and speaking
Right.
into them.
And then, like I said, and then where do you feel comfortable? So
Mm.
of these places that your audience hangs out, where are you comfortable? Because if you're not comfortable there, it'll show, and then your marketing's not as good. It's better to have one or two things that you do really well than 15 things that you do poorly.
Yes.
And so the other thing that I would recommend is find one or two places to start and do it until it either is successful or you recognize it isn't going to be successful.
Mm.
And then once you have two things that really work well, maybe it's time to add a third. Maybe you can stretch out a little and try something else, because these two things that are working well don't take as much time anymore because they're working well. You have a nice little oiled machine and you throw a little food into it, and it does fine. Now you have a little more energy. We can maybe try this third channel, but there's no reason to, you're a brand new author and you say, oh my gosh, here's all the things I need to do. And then you try to do them all at once. You're going to go home and cry.
Yeah.
And so you have to start with something. And I usually say you should have a website to start, and you should try to have a newsletter where people can sign up so that you can keep up with them. Once you have that, now maybe look at, is there a social media channel that you think would be most effective? Start
Mm.
there. Then once you're done and you've got that, now maybe look into, I don't know, is podcasting good for you? Is it something else, like, and then start. But you can't do it all at once. It's not like on day one you say, oh, well, I'm going to market now and I am going to, you're not going to get it. It'll be crazy. You will burn out so fast and be
Mm.
so sure that this is not good for you. And I know a lot of authors who've just quit marketing altogether. And it's like, okay, well, that's, now you're writing, but for whom?
Yes.
Because no one ever gets to see it,
Yeah.
you know? Yeah.
Yeah. That's another kind of all or nothing mindset. I think
Yeah.
that a lot of us do fall into
Yeah.
sometimes.
Yeah. It's too much. I'm going to stop. And instead, you should say, it's too much. What can I do to make it not too much?
Yes.
Maybe I don't need to post on 7 different social media sites.
Yeah. I think a lot of
Maybe,
time people get stuck into that particular trap because we
yes.
think, oh, well, if I'm creating a post, I might as well just post it here, 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 and here, and here, and here as well. And it's like, yeah, that does make sense. But then you have to respond to the comments on all of those platforms and remember which platforms you've done and all that stuff. And it is just does zap your creative force
Oh,
quite
yeah.
quickly.
Oh, yeah. So for a while, I had me, and then I had my podcast as a separate from me. So I had social media for both. I couldn't keep up with it all. It was so overwhelming that, I mean, it really was getting to the point I thought maybe I would just stop my podcast. And then I realized it isn't the podcast that's too much. It's all of this extra. So I combined it. I am me and my podcast and my books. And I have one. If you want to find me, it's Teri M. Brown. I mean, that's where you find me. And if you want to know about my podcast, it'll be there. And if you want to know about my books, it'll be there. And if you want, me for a speaking engagement, that's where you can find it. It's I'm one person doing a few things. And I think that we often make the assumption that people can't handle that.
Yeah.
Like, oh, you have to be someone different for each thing you do. I think that people are smarter than that. I think that it's okay. I think that they're perfectly fine with the fact that Teri writes, reads, and reviews, does podcasts. Like, it's okay that I have more than one aspect of who I am and that you can find me all in one place. I, I don't know. Maybe I'm wrong. I don't know, but it works for me. And it kept me from getting rid of a podcast that I love. And
Mhm.
it kept me from hating my social media, which I have trimmed way down. And I have a nice little thing that I run and I can get it all done easily and quickly. I know what I'm doing now. So that's what I needed to do. So that's, I guess, is another thought is if it's overwhelming, what can you automate? What can you eliminate?
Mm.
What can you do to streamline the process? Because
Yeah.
there are things out there, and sometimes it's worth paying a little bit of money to get an app or to get a solution of some kind, because that little bit of money will save you so much headache that it's worth the trade-off, you know.
Yeah, definitely. I think a lot of people again get that into that mindset of, oh, but I do, especially if they're very multifaceted like you are, in terms of your writing and also in terms of everything else that you do. We always think, oh, but I have to make it make sense. It has to make sense. It's like, well, yes,
Yeah.
you can have messaging that makes it an ecosystem that will
Right.
make sense because it's who you are. It's just you
Right.
make sense.
Right.
And
Yes, because
it's all
and I've worked with someone who was saying, yeah, but I've got this and I've got this, I've got this. I said, yeah, that's all you. You're, you know, usually as a creative, you it's you that you're marketing. You're marketing yourself. And then those things that you do are a branch of that. And so I do not have a website for each of my books.
gosh,
I
we could
have
never do that with the amount of books you've written.
Some people do that though, where they've got
Wow.
all of these websites and then they have to keep them all up to date.
Ooh.
Okay. I have one website. One. If you want to find anything about me that is public information, it will be on that website. You do not have to go any further than that. I think that's easier for you as well.
Yes.
For my audience who says, "Oh, I just read Daughters of Green Mountain Gap. I wonder if this author has any other books I'd like to read."
Yeah.
Right? Well, they don't have to go to Daughters of Green Mountain Gap, then do a Google search, and then they can go to me, and there they find my list of books. It's right there. And oh, look, she has a podcast. And oh, look, she reviews books. And oh, look, she has a blog. And oh, look, here's where I can find her on social media. It's all in one spot.
Yeah. I can imagine actually as somebody landing on that page, that being so much more exciting
Yeah,
because like not only are you just finding the book that you've already just read, But you're actually thinking, oh wow, like this person has a whole other world I didn't know
Right.
about.
I didn't know about it. And look, I can get on, I can join her newsletter, or I could, it shows where she's going to be next month. And I live close enough by, I think I'm going to go to that event or whatever. It's all in one spot. And for me, it's so much easier as well because I market me. And therefore, on any given Tuesday, like on Tuesdays, I call it Toot Your Own Horn Tuesday, and I'm allowed to put out, something that's going on with me. Well, it can be anything. It can be with my blog. It can be about my podcast. It can be one of my books. It can be anything because
Mm.
it's not about the book. It's about me. And so I can do whatever it is that best fits what's going on with me at the moment. And I just think that's also something to consider, especially as a creative, and especially if you have more than one line.
Yeah.
If you are only cozy mystery author, then maybe it's a little easier to have. But for someone like me who's like all over the map, you want to know about Teri, go to Teri's page, and then you can find everything you want to know. And you can ignore those things that don't suit you.
Yeah. Exactly. Yeah, I love that. But I guess again, it's kind of similar to what we said earlier, about picking a niche or not picking a niche. It's
Right.
like make it easy for yourself and make it
Yes.
less overwhelming for yourself, but also be true to yourself.
Right.
Ask yourself, what's gonna feel good? Is it gonna be having one website? Is it gonna be having one Instagram? Or is it gonna be having 50 different ones?
Yeah. Right. And for me, I mean, that's a no-brainer. I also know a lot of authors, and for it works for them. And I'm not bashing, I'm just saying what's different
Yeah.
about them and me is they have for each different genre they write, they have a pen name. So, maybe they're, Terry Brown for one, and they're TM, round face two, and they're like they have all these names, right? Oh my gosh, could never do that. Trouble remembering who I am on any given day, let alone having to remember that on this podcast today, I'm Teri, but on a podcast. And then what if I'm on this podcast? Who am I to you? If I have four names that I write under,
Yeah.
because this podcast isn't about a specific book. So now
Yes.
who am I? Like that would make me nuts.
Yeah, I understand the logic of someone doing that, and I can
I
see
do.
why it
I
would make
do.
sense for some people. But then I can also,
Yes.
if that was me as well, that would just confuse the hell
And
out of
so
me.
right. And so I think that what this really boils down to is there's not one right way to market. There's not one right way to be creative, but you have to find a system that works for you. And if it isn't working for you, be willing to change it.
Yeah.
So this is another thing. I have someone who is putting together a website, and they're very concerned about getting everything just perfect before they release it to the world because it has to be just perfect. And I keep telling them it's gonna morph and change. Like where
Yeah.
I started, the first iteration of my website looks nothing like it does now 4 years later. Because I knew what I wanted then, and it has changed. I've grown. I've gotten more books. I realized that I couldn't focus on just one area. I needed a broader. I had to figure all of that out. So you can also paralyze yourself by believing, well, and before I put out my website, it has to be exactly the way I want it to be. And this is always the way it will be. And so you're
Yeah.
trying to future plan and all that. Don't worry about it. Put out what you have, make changes as you go. Your audience will follow along with you. Have you ever stopped visiting a website that you enjoy simply because they changed the color palette? No, right? But yet we get ourselves into that feeling that if I don't pick the right color palette and then stick with it, that everything is ruined. And it's like,
Yeah.
no, you make changes and people follow along with you, and you make the
Yeah.
changes in a way that they can still follow along and know that you're you, but you just keep making the changes. And yeah.
Yeah. God, thinking while you're saying that, I was thinking about I have my website for probably 13 years. And it's
Uh-huh.
changed, I don't know how many times. In fact,
Right.
I had a friend who does like websites and tech and stuff, and he was
Yeah.
looking about something on my website not long ago, and he was like, "Oh, do you know that you've written this here?" And I was like, "Have I? It's been there for how long? It's written like that. It
It's
actually doesn't make any sense. Whoops."
whoops. Okay, well, I'll change that. And so the thing is that marketing doesn't have to be perfect. It has to be good for now. And we can always make changes. And if it's something's not working for you, if you decided that you were going to use pen names and you recognize this is not working for you, you can make the change. It might be a little
Yeah.
tough, but you can eventually make that change. You don't have to stick with something that isn't working for you.
Yeah, love that. And I think that's definitely a nice way to kind of guide us toward the end. And I think for everyone to really remember is that line there. Maybe replay that, go back and listen to that a few times. I like to finish the conversation with two questions that I ask
Okay.
everybody, and I'm keen to hear what your answers are. The first one is, what do you think is the most common misconception people have? It could be either about you as a person or about what you do.
I think that a lot of people assume that writing is either harder than it is or easier than it is.
Mm.
I have people that come up to me all the time and say, "Oh yeah, I want to write a book," as though they're going to do that tomorrow afternoon, while sitting at the beach, and they'll have this novel out by next week. I also have people who say things like, "I could never write a book like that." It's, like there's no way. It's in the middle. It's in the middle. It is hard. Oops, I'm sorry. I don't know if you could hear that. My alarm went off and it was
Oh,
I'm
no,
sorry
I
about
couldn't
that.
hear it, but no
Okay.
worries.
Okay. Um, so to me, it's in the middle. It is harder than you think, but it's not impossible. So if it's something you want, it's definitely achievable, but it's not something that you're going to do tomorrow afternoon and mark it off on your checklist. Written a
Yeah.
book, done.
Yeah,
So
that's so true. I've met so many people that are, I'm going to write a book one day, or
yeah,
that
yeah,
the overwhelm of even the thought of doing it just kind of clouds over their head, and they're like,
yeah,
I
right.
could never
Right.
do that.
And it really is somewhere in the middle of that. Yes, it's I mean it's difficult in that you can't do it in an afternoon. You need to sit down, you have to be persistent, etc. But it is doable if it's something you want.
Yeah,
But it's also not everybody can just write a book,
yeah,
you know.
definitely.
So there is a lot of value to people who can write a book because not everyone has the perseverance to sit down and make that happen. So
Yeah, definitely. Love that. The second question is, if you look back over your life or your career and remember one conversation that sticks out in your mind, who were you speaking to, and what did they say that you remember so well? Could be a piece of advice, or it could just be a one-liner that they didn't even imagine was going to be a memory that you carry
yeah,
forever.
I think the memory is I was talking with an editor of turned out they ended up being my publisher, but I was talking with them, and I was under the impression that we were having a let's learn a little bit about your company conversation. And it turns out that they had already decided that they wanted my manuscript. And so we have this long conversation, and I'm in one space and they're in another space. And they said, "Well, do you have any more questions for us?" And I said, "Well, now that we've done this kind of talking, about how long would it be before I would know whether or not I'm even in the running to be in this?" And he says, "Oh, when we get off this phone call, I'm sending you a contract." And from that point on, we had another 5 minutes conversation. I did not hear anything. I have no idea what he said. I have
No.
no idea because I was in a totally different space. I thought this was just a get to know one another, learn a little bit about each other kind of thing. And I was totally and completely unaware. And then when I started running the conversation back, it made more sense that this conversation was about the fact that they wanted my manuscript. I was unaware. so totally unaware. And that's, to me, it's just really crazy how you cannot comprehend what someone else wants from you. So yeah, that to me,
Yeah.
that I'll always remember that, because what I mostly remember is the 5 minutes, my mind going, oh my gosh, oh my gosh. And I didn't hear anything. He could have said anything to me at that point. I have no idea. No idea what he said.
Amazing. I love that. Well, Teri, thank you so much for coming on the show. It's been an absolute pleasure chatting to you. I'll pop the links to find you in the comments, in the show notes underneath. But just in case anyone's poised and ready to find you right now, where is the best place that they can go to find you?
The best place is my website, guys, and it's my name, TeriMBrown.com, and that's Teri with one R. There you can find everything, my books, my all of my social media. You can sign up for my newsletter. My podcast is there. You can find the blog that I kept the whole way across the United States. You name it, and it's there. I also just have a contact me page. So if you get there and there's something you wish that you could find and you can't, reach out to me and I will tell you what you need to know and get it on my website for everyone else.
Okay, amazing. Well, I will definitely pop that link in the show notes for everyone listening or watching. Thank you so much for being here. As always, do leave a comment or a rating or a review if you got all the way to the end, or if you've enjoyed the conversation. We'd love to know what you took away from it. But otherwise, I will see you again next week. Thank you so much for joining me for this episode of Maverick Mind. I hope that you've loved it, and if you have, I would appreciate it so much if you would subscribe and write a 5-star review on wherever you're listening to this podcast from. If you'd like to keep the conversation going, I invite you to join me over on Instagram at maverickmindco or on my website maverickmind.elliefoden.com. And I'll see you in another podcast very, very soon.